welcome to Don't Give Up Your Day Job, the podcast, the only podcast you need. My name is Danny McCrum, and today our guest is Aditya Kalyanpur. I think I'm saying that right, but I'm not entirely sure. I looked it up on YouTube, and I am now copying someone else who said his name, so if I haven't got it right, I apologize for that. But I was very happy to receive an email from Aditya's manager asking if I would be happy to have him on the show, and I looked at his credits and I thought, wow, he's worked with Herbie Hancock, and Herbie Hancock is one of my all-time heroes. I've always loved his playing, I've always loved pretty much all of his work. I love what he stands for as a musician, his innovation over the years. Of course, Herbie worked with Miles Davis, but he's also done all sorts of amazing stuff under his own name. Herbie's contribution to music is really hard to even begin to try and explain. It's far-reaching. His book Possibilities, which came out, I guess, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, is also one of the most inspiring books I've ever read. It's a really honest book about Herbie's journey through jazz, living in New York, working with Miles Davis, going through all the various stages in his career, dealing with various levels of personal problems, his spirituality, having to step up to big challenges and find his way through and figure out how to overcome them. Herbie Hancock, for me, became someone that I think about when I'm not sure what to do next, especially in my career when the next step isn't quite obvious. Should I stay? Should I go? What should I do next? Should I do this? Should I say yes? Should I say no? How should I deal with this problem? There are a number of people in my mind that I go to. Bob Dylan's one of them, Tommy Emmanuel's one of them, and Herbie Hancock's one of them. And I think to myself, like that bumper sticker, what would Jesus do? For me, it's like, what would Bob do? Or what would Herbie do? So I get an email saying, would you like to speak to Aditya? He's worked with Herbie Hancock. And I'm, of course, immediately interested. I then look Aditya up and find out that he's also an incredibly inspiring individual with this amazing career behind him. So I was really looking forward to this conversation because I had a feeling I knew how it might go. I had a feeling that we were about to have a really interesting conversation about music. I know I talk predominantly to musicians on this show, and obviously we talk about music all the time. But there are different sort of levels of music. There are different types of careers one can have in music. Someone can have a relatively casual relationship with music, and other people go really deep. I'm not saying that in a judgmental kind of fashion. It's just the way it is. And Aditya is one of these musicians who is so deep in it and has always lived in it and has never done anything else, and everything about him is music. And so I knew it was going to be good, and boy, what a conversation. I say on the promo blurb attached to this episode that this is a celebration of Aditya's incredible journey and a love letter to music, and I think that that's true. So dig in and enjoy. This is my conversation with Aditya Kalyanpur.
Now let's do this!
Hats off to you for doing such an amazing, initiative to bring to the fore lives of people who have given a life to their respective professions or, their passions.
Thank you very much.
So the credit goes to you for working so hard to come up with some concept like this.
I appreciate that. Yeah, well, I mean, we both know how hard it is to get started in music and to figure out how to, pursue the art and the creativity, but also pay rent and pay bills and, function in the world.
That's true. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's challenging, but it's fun,
Exactly. Yeah. It's like an adventure.
Yes. Every day is a new adventure.
That's right. Yeah. So I grew up in a very typical Western environment with pop music on the radio and pop culture and that kind of thing. And somewhere along the way, I started to realize that there was more out there in the world than just what was on pop radio. So I started on my own terms investigating that. I found music from Spain and from South America and of course from the Middle East and from India and all these different places. And some of this stuff blew my mind. There were different ideas around time and a bit different ideas around note structures and even just the way that music was arranged. And it's become a great love of mine now to listen to music from all around the world and through different moments in the past as well. I'm curious to know, though, you grew up in Mumbai, is that right?
That's right.
Yeah.
I grew up in Mumbai, yeah.
So for you, were you automatically, were you plugged into what was going on in Western pop music in Mumbai, or were you more immersed in the culture there growing up?
Well, I was very fortunate that as a child, I was exposed to different genres of music. I mean, my mother loved Indian classical music. My father loved a lot of pop music, and we had some musicians in Mumbai playing jazz.
Yep.
And things like that. So I was very fortunate that I was exposed to all the genres as a child.
Right.
So of course, classical music remained very close to my heart, as a child, and I was very drawn to the tabla, Indian drums.
Yeah.
But I always loved every genre of music growing up.
And so, because Mumbai, of course, is a huge city, like any other city, really, probably bigger than most cities.
Oh, yes.
So
Mumbai is probably bigger than New Zealand.
I'd say that's true. There's only just under 5 million people in New Zealand. How many people are in Mumbai?
Probably more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is it just a normal city in the sense that you've got, Michael Jackson on the radio in the 80s, and you've got, McDonald's selling burgers, and you've got all the typical big city stuff?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Mumbai is, it's the one of the more. It's not one of the. It's the most prominent city in India, I would say.
Right.
The capital is New Delhi, but Mumbai is also the financial hub, like New York or
Yes.
Sydney or maybe Auckland or London or something.
Mm.
So it's a financial hub. It's the commercial capital. And it's a cosmopolitan crowd.
Yeah, right.
People from all over the world, all over the country, are always trying to make it to Mumbai, to make a living.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a city that never sleeps. It's a city that welcomes everybody
Right.
with open arms, and they always say you never go hungry in Mumbai if you work hard.
Yep.
So I think. It offers everybody an opportunity to explore themselves.
Yes.
And see what they where their calling lies, I think.
Because there's so much variety and so many options there.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
like LA has Hollywood.
Yeah.
Bombay has Bollywood.
Right.
Which is the entertainment hub too. It's the commercial hub too.
Yep.
All the hub to everything. I mean, music, Indian classical music, some of the greatest musicians from India, whether it's Bollywood or classical or jazz or, any different genre. Some of the greatest icons were born in Mumbai.
Right. And so is it fair to say that there's probably not much difference in regards to what you and I were both exposed to in pop culture with music and television and movies and things? You probably came across most of the same stuff I came across?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
There was always Bollywood on TV,
Yep.
Indian classical music on TV back in the day, growing up in the 80s, and when TV just came out, things like that. So
what were your favorite shows in the 80s?
I would say some of the Indian shows,
Yeah, right.
were my favorites.
Did you get American shows like MacGyver and Knight Rider and that sort of stuff?
Not back in the day,
No.
It took some it I think all that started in late 90s, I would say, mid 90s,
Right.
late 90s.
Yeah.
When I was in my I was in college that time.
Yes.
So
Gotcha.
that's when the entertainment industry really took off.
Right.
And world over we had Star TV and all that started coming into India gradually. So
So there's a sort of a delay, like some of the shows that were, probably current in the 80s took maybe another decade to be played in India. Is that what you're saying?
no, I wouldn't say a decade, but it took some time because there are so many things. The government has to approve of lot of things,
Right.
and ensure that it all the compliances are met and it's right for all age groups to be seen. And
Yeah.
India has a lot of it gives a lot of importance to traditional values,
Right.
and lot of things like that, culture, art, and all that.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it's not it takes time for it to go through all the screening process before things are allowed, and
I understand.
It's
Yeah.
appropriate for every age group to see certain things and all that.
Sure. Yeah. So, what kind of kid were you growing up? Were you a energetic, rebellious kid, or were you a quiet, like bookworm, or?
I think I was extremely energetic and
Yeah.
extremely mischievous, extremely naughty. But all my energies were always focused towards my music. Fortunately,
Right.
all my energy I could completely, divert to my music, to my learning,
Mm.
and working on my craft and things like that. So all the mischievousness, or what the creative part of my being mischief, it's all goes into my music even today.
Right. It was all focused into that.
So
So, what age did you start playing music? Was it from as far
well,
back as you can remember?
I started actually playing tabla since I was about 2.5 years old,
Wow.
which I clearly remember.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I still remember even the tabla pair, the tabla drums
Mm-hmm.
that we had at home, at my grandmother's place.
Yep.
And so I was trying to already listen to different kind of rhythms and kind of play it on tabla.
Wow.
I could identify a lot of rhythms of Indian classical music, by the age of 4.
Huh.
And so my parents, grandparents, seniors, elders were always kind of surprised, I think, pleasantly, that how he can identify so much with rhythm, because I don't belong to a family of musicians.
That was going to be my next question. Were you surrounded by players?
I belong to a family of music lovers.
Right. Yeah.
So there was lot of listening to different genres of Indian music.
Yeah.
There is folk music, there is classical music, there is light classical music, there is film music. So it was all there. And both my grandmothers were very fond of music. They kind of played a little bit of the harmonium
Mm.
and sang some bhajans, a light classical form in which is sung in praise of the Lord.
Right.
So bhajans is devotional music. So something like that. And all that was always, I was something, listening to all that.
That raises an interesting subject for me, because I've often thought that learning music and learning to play music, obviously a large part of that is the physical, sitting at the instrument and practicing, but there's also this huge other part of learning music that is, I think, about listening and soaking it in.
Absolutely.
Which is harder to qualify that part of it, which is why we probably don't talk about it as much. But when you have someone growing up immersed in music and really taking it in and turning it over in their mind and in their heart, I think that's a lot of where great musicianship comes from, in my opinion.
I mean, absolutely right. I mean, I think what goes into making a musician is, apart from working on your own craft and doing your own practice for hours and hours,
Yeah.
I think equal amount of time goes into listening to other great masters,
Yes.
listening to other forms of music, all the time.
Yeah.
And was always doing that. I was as a child, I was always listening to masters of other schools of Indian tabla playing,
Right.
and listening to their cassettes. And apart from my own teachers and my own gurus, guru means a teacher in India.
Yeah.
So apart from that, I was listening to a lot of great masters, going to concerts of a lot of other senior musicians and things like that. So I think I would say I learned more by listening than actual training at times,
Right. And for you, was it I suppose the answer is probably going to be it's a bit of both, but for you, was it a mathematical thing, or was it more about how it made you feel? Were you listening to music thinking, oh, that's interesting, it's 7 beats per bar, or were you thinking that, that makes me feel a certain way?
I actually didn't even have to think of it as, oh, that 7-beat rhythmic cycle or something.
Right.
It is something that I just identified with.
Yeah.
I knew it was 7, so, I mean, I didn't have to be told it is 7 or it is 8 or 9 beats or something. It is something, it is like, it was already a part of me.
But there must have been a point where you didn't know it was 7. So how did you learn how to count? Like, how to musically count?
Like I said, I was able to identify rhythmic patterns as a child.
Right.
So I could, identify a complicated 12-beat rhythmic cycle at the age of 3.5 or 4. And
It's amazing.
my my family members used to be like, where did he learn this from? And so it used to be they used to be very intrigued at how he's able to identify with these rhythmic patterns that we call tal.
Yeah.
Tal is a rhythmic cycle.
Right.
So a 12-beat rhythmic tal or a 7-beat rhythmic tal.
Yeah.
So music or tabla, whenever played, it was something. It always felt part of me,
Yeah.
an extension of me. That something. It never felt like, oh, that's music or that's tabla or something. It was like it's me.
Yes.
It's already. This is something that I don't have to make an effort to make mine or feel it's mine.
It was an extension of who you are.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was very much an intrinsic part of, is that the right word?
I think so,
Intrinsic part of my life growing up.
Right. Yeah. And did you actually have any formal lessons of any kind?
Yes, I learned from one of the greatest tabla performers and teachers of our times. The legendary Ustad Alla Rakha.
Right.
I'm sure you have heard of him, and he and Pandit Ravi Shankar ji,
Yeah.
both revolutionized Indian classical music across the globe.
And how did you get in touch with him? Like, how did you manage to get lessons with him?
Well, he had an institute in Mumbai.
Right.
He was based in Mumbai, and that was the time when he had just opened up the school, and they were offering lessons there. But the age group was such that not everybody could get in till you were at least 10 years of age.
Right. Okay.
But still, because I could identify with it and with tabla, and somebody mentioned to us about the institute. We got my aunt who lives in America.
Yeah.
She heard about it from the great Ustad Alla Rakha's son, the great tabla, his great son Ustad Zakir Hussain. He happened to meet my aunt somewhere, and she got to know that Ustad Alla Rakha runs the music institute in Mumbai, and she always knew of my craziness towards tabla. So she was like, oh, maybe this would be perfect for him.
Right.
So then we just went and approached, and he just looked at me, and everybody around was much older, much bigger, much elder to me.
How old were you?
And I was about 6, 7,
Right.
8, 6.5 or so. And he just looked at me and he said, you want to learn tabla? And I was like, yeah, I want to learn from you.
Yeah.
And he was like, let me think, and then he started teaching his students, and I was sitting there for 3 hours in his class.
Right.
I didn't move for 3 hours, and after 3 hours, he suddenly looked at me and he realized, oh my God, this kid is still sitting here. He hasn't even moved for 3 hours. And he was so engrossed in his teaching.
Yeah.
That he forgot I was even there. And I was there, listening and watching everybody.
Right.
And suddenly he realized that I'm still sitting there 3 hours later.
Right.
And then he looked at his younger son, the percussion maestro, Ustad Tawfiq Qureshi. He looked at him and he said, did you see this kid is still sitting here? It's been 3 hours since he came and he's not moved. He's right there for last 3 hours. So what do you think we should do with him? So, Tawfiq Bhai, his youngest son, said, to his father, he was called Abbaji, which means father.
Right.
And he said, Abbaji, the fact that, this child is sitting here for 3 hours means something, that
Right.
he really has a liking for it. And, so I think you should, though he's little and, small, you should probably maybe give it a try to teach him and see how it goes,
Yeah.
and you never know.
Yeah.
So he looked at me and he said, okay, come from tomorrow. You can come from
And when did he first hear you play? Was that the next day?
No, he heard me the same day
Oh, the same day, right?
for a few minutes, and
Yeah,
he said, "Okay, fine, sit down."
right.
It's like there was so little, and
Yeah,
he was the grand master of tabla, and considered one of the living gods of tabla at that time.
he must have been impressed though
So
to see someone so young play so competently, right?
yeah, and he was surprised, and that's how the journey began.
Wow. And when you started the lessons, what's the process? I mean, I'm so used to the classical lessons mentality, in the Western world. You start with C major and you run scales. How do you begin lessons in that context?
So basically, we have one rhythmic cycle which is considered like the king of tals.
Okay.
Like teen tal. It's a 16-beat rhythmic cycle,
Yep.
and you learn all the compositions in teen tal,
Right.
and you learn different compositions which are called kaidas,
Mm-hmm.
and you learn like a zillion kaidas growing up.
Right.
Year after year, you just keep learning kaidas because that's what builds your stamina, builds your helps you expand your knowledge, helps all the fingers to get developed accordingly. You learn different finger techniques by playing different kinds of kaidas.
Right.
So there are like a zillion combinations you can have of kaidas.
And is this through them showing you and then you imitating, or is it written down?
Indian classical music has been an oral tradition mainly.
Really?
So
Wow.
it's been an oral tradition, and all these masters never wrote anything,
Hmm.
and it's most of it is all composed just on the spot.
So it's improvised, a lot of it.
Even the teaching is improvised, the learning is improvised, your performances are improvised. Nothing is written down. You never see a sheet in front of an Indian musician, right?
Right.
You're playing from all the years of training, as they say, the muscle memory has developed to be be improvisational at any time.
Yeah. So I guess they're teaching music more as a call and response or a question and answer.
Yes,
As a
call and response would be right,
Yeah.
and it trains you to work within a certain framework, within the ambit of a certain framework,
Right.
or a rhythmic cycle or a melodic structure.
Yeah.
But at the same time, what it does is it trains you to be spontaneous.
Yes. Right.
It trains you to be you could just randomly go from one idea to another idea, and it may be thinking out of the box, it may be breaking the barriers of tradition, and that becomes genius, or that becomes great master or something like that.
Right.
So that's how the whole thing works.
Would you say that having that ability to respond and to communicate musically almost becomes more important than the physical ability to play, the physical technique, or do they have to be intertwined? Is a marriage of both?
It's a combination of both.
Yeah.
And the tabla player's role is extremely difficult because in Indian classical music, tabla is mainly an accompanying instrument.
Right.
So a tabla player is he's playing several roles there.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's listening to what the instrumentalist or the vocalist is doing. He's maintaining the tal, the rhythmic cycle with his hand,
Right.
and he's paying attention to what the other musician is performing,
Yeah.
and he's also preparing what to respond when it's his chance, and also how to add creativity, and try and make it extremely entertaining, and make it exemplary so that it reaches the soul of the audience.
Yes, exactly.
So there are like he's trying to wear different hats at all time.
Well, I was watching some clips of you before we started this interview, and I noticed exactly what you're talking about. So many layers of rhythm, but there's also the pitch control with the talking. I guess it was when you're pressing the skin down.
Yeah, on the left drum, it's basically the bass drum.
Yeah. And then, like you said, you're picking up on the phrases that the other instruments are playing and complementing or playing the same thing or something that's going to complement
or,
that.
or responding in an appropriate way or something.
Right.
Yeah.
And the other thing that really amazes me is how many different sounds you get out of two small drums, basically. I mean, you're actually, you could close your eyes and think there are about 12 musicians playing.
Yes. And actually there is only one note in that small drum,
Yeah.
like a C note or a C sharp or a D note.
Right.
That's all you have on the right treble drum.
Oh, I see. On the right one, yes. On the left one,
Yeah.
on the left one, you can do pitch control.
That's with that's what you can do with your hand
Yeah,
movement.
you press it down with your wrist,
with
right?
with the pressure on the skin that
Yeah.
you talked about.
Have you ever sat on a conventional drum kit and tried to play?
I have a little bit of tried doing that at times.
Yeah.
I used to do a lot of stick work. Play paradiddles and mummy daddy daddy mummy mummy daddy daddy mummy, all that. I was
Yeah.
always intrigued by different drums
Yeah.
and percussions and all that.
I can imagine you'd be incredible on a conventional drum kit.
I really haven't practiced that much yet.
Right, but you've got so much speed and your timing is astounding. I mean, obviously you've been playing your whole life, but your sense of time is obviously so well grounded and built in.
Let's hope it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's hope it is.
That's the goal, right? But does it disorientate you when you're on other instruments, or do they just become new, different types of voicings for what's already in you?
Yeah, I mean, they all feel like a part of the same percussion family.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially percussion instruments.
Right. Now, I know faith and religion is a huge part of the culture in India, and I can only imagine that that's all tied up with music as well. Is it considered to be very much one and the same pursuit?
Well, music is one thing, I believe.
Right.
It transcends everything.
Yeah.
Music becomes a religion.
Yes, I agree, actually.
Humanity becomes a religion. And you bow down to music, you bow down to the notes or to the syllables of your tabla playing.
Right.
They become your god. They become your the cosmic power or the force.
Yeah.
That we all believe in, and we believe in different faiths, and but at the end of it, music is one thing which brings the whole world together.
Yes, exactly.
You don't even have to when you meet any other musician, you don't even wonder what their background is, or which nationality he or she came from, or what his or her religion is. Someone is playing guitar and I'm playing tabla, and somebody is playing keyboards or something.
Yeah.
And it becomes music. That becomes the religion.
It's an amazing experience when you play with someone who doesn't speak the same language as you, isn't it? And yet you can connect musically.
That's what I'm saying. That's one universal language.
Yeah.
That breaks all political, religious, all barriers that unfortunately are there in the world.
Yes.
It brings everybody together.
I was once in Guitar Center in Brooklyn about 8 years ago, and there was a big stack of amps down the middle of the room, and I was on one side, and the guy in the shop said, "Would you like to try that guitar?" And I said, "Sure." So I sat down and started playing the guitar, and on the other side of the stack of amps, someone else was playing the guitar, and I couldn't see them because the amps were too high, and we just started playing in the same key, and we just sort of locked into each other and started jamming together.
See?
And we sat there and jammed for about 10 or 15 minutes or so, and then it kind of came to a natural end, and I put the guitar down and I stood up and I ended up leaving the store, and then it occurred to me later I never actually saw the person. So we shared this musical experience, and I have no idea who it was. I love that.
That's what I'm saying. There you just blend into humanity and music.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, it just brings the whole universe and mankind together.
So did you know when you were young were you thinking in terms of career? Were you thinking like, this is what I want to do with my life and how I want to make a living?
To be honest, I didn't even have to think about that. No, because it was always the only thing I did was play tabla. So there was no question of thinking of wanting to do something else,
right?
Or trying to decide, I want to become a medical doctor or an MBA or an IT person or somebody. For me, if I didn't do this, I didn't exist.
Right. But there must have been people asking what your plans were, right? I mean, where I grew up, people when you're about 15, 16, 17, people are saying, well, what are you going to go and study? You know, what are you going to do with your life?
Well, I was performing on stage since age 8.
Right.
So everybody around me knew that this is all that he does.
It was a done deal. Yeah.
And he seems to do a decent job at that, since that age.
Right.
And he's very, very promising. And his teacher, his guru, has a lot of hopes from him.
Yep.
To take the tradition forward, to take the legacy forward of tabla playing. So there was already like it was like I had inherited this legacy, unsaid legacy of a tabla playing, and my guru, blessed me very, very much.
Right.
And he gave me all he could, a love and knowledge, as like a grandfather would give a grandson.
Yeah.
And I feel very blessed that his blessings help me and keep me inspired to keep going forward.
And I'm sure that gives you an internal strength as well through all the highs and lows.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I just feel so fortunate.
But there must have been a point where you finished your schooling and you had to make a decision about how you're going to spend your time next, right? Did you finish school and go to university or something, or did you?
Yeah, I did my bachelor's in commerce.
Yep. Okay.
I also studied in Mumbai University. I did a degree course in tabla,
right,
which I did fairly well, very, very well by God's grace. And so everything around me, everything about me was all about tabla growing up.
Yeah.
Everybody, I mean, I was not like a regular kid who, just because I went to college, I hung out with people in the canteen, or I went for picnics, or, I went on tours and vacations and with friends, or with for movies on the weekend. I never did anything like that.
Right. Yeah.
I rarely did that because, when any friend even wanted to ask me, hey, what's your plan for Sunday? Some other friend would say, don't even ask him. He probably will be practicing his tabla, or he will be attending a concert, or he will be playing a concert,
yeah,
or he will be studying with his guru. So don't even bother asking him because he's not going to come.
Yeah, right. And so and what made you choose commerce then? I mean, I think that's actually a really sensible choice to get some other knowledge that can help your career in the mechanical side.
Well, when I finished school and I had to make this decision to go to college,
yeah,
I went and spoke to my guru and my senior guru and his son Ustad Zakir Hussain.
Right.
And he very wisely said, well, you are going to be a professional tabla player all your life, so you better know how to manage your money.
Exactly.
So you should study commerce.
Right.
That's what he said.
That's amazing advice. How lucky were you to have that advice?
Oh yeah, I mean, invaluable advice,
Yeah. So once you finished university, did you have other jobs along the way, or were you just starting to literally make a living just from music from that point?
Well, I was already making a living through music since I was 13 or 14.
Well, I mean, it's hard to make money in New Zealand through music, so I guess I still have to wrap my brain around it.
I was already playing concerts. I was playing a lot of commercial, jingles, recording session work.
Yeah.
I was doing that. I was playing fusion concerts. I was playing classical concerts. I was playing college events. I was already making decent amount of money. To be honest.
Yeah.
And I never thought really about money.
So I mean, if you're already in this, I mean, that's amazing, by the way. But if you're already in the swing of it and your career's basically going great at that point, do you have ambition? Do you have something you're striving for, or are you just in the middle of it going for it?
The ambition is to be a better musician each day.
Right.
The ambition is to make better music every day.
Yes.
That's the ambition. The ambition is to see, to compete with yourself every day.
Yes.
And how to improve, how to set higher standards for yourself, growing as a musician.
And how do you approach that? Do you have any practice regimes or strategies or anything that you use?
Well, I practice every day.
Yep.
I do my riyaz, as it's called in Urdu.
Mm-hmm.
Riyaz, Riyaz, riyaz.
Right.
is means practice. It means a dedicated time to do your like your practice daily, like disciplined approach.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think every time I sit down to do my riyas, it teaches me something new.
Right. It happens regardless almost by putting the time in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't have to like try and create something different most of the time.
Yeah.
While practicing even some traditional compositions or even the regular ones that you kind of the regular drills that you do,
Right.
uh, within few minutes you realize, oh, you are doing something different
Yeah.
every day.
Exactly.
So the ambition is still to be a better musician, a better tabla player every day, to do better than yesterday.
And how do you find your voice as a musician? There are so many musicians out there. Is that something that you've thought about? Like how do you create your own musical statement that sets you apart from other musicians?
I think rigorous hours of practice, rigorous hours of listening to great masters,
Mm.
and adding your own creativity, aspect to that, all of that,
Right.
and to come up with something new,
Mm.
automatically makes you sound different.
So it's like you're opening the doorway somehow so that organically who you are can translate through your music without any type of filter or hindrance.
Absolutely, and I feel it's a natural process. I think after years and years of doing something over and over again,
Yeah.
I think somewhere you kind of start finding that your own path,
Right.
which is of course inspired by a lot of different elements of
Mm.
life.
Mm.
Like a percussionist from LA inspired me to change some finger techniques on the tabla
Yes. Right.
and things like that. So it's difficult to pinpoint who in particular inspires you the most,
Yeah.
because there are phases when you're listening to some master, or there are phases when you're practicing something different.
Yeah.
So it's a combination of all of that.
Yeah. And one thing I love that you said before, which we've had other guests say as well, is that you're working on incremental development, just improving a little bit every day. We had a guest on a few years ago called Tommy Emmanuel, who's a fantastic guitar player, and because I worked with him years ago, and I asked him once, "Were you trying to become the greatest guitar player out there?" And he said, "No, I was just trying to become a little bit better every day." And I thought that was amazing, because if you're trying to become the best, then you spend the entire time in your career failing because you're never going to be the best. And it also puts you into a competitive mindset rather than a mindset of self-improvement.
Right.
And I think that part of music culture has suffered in the last couple of decades because of things like reality shows and talent contests and commercial ambition and that sort of thing, where it has become competitive, like who's number one and who's number two and who's number three, where for me personally that's never felt right to me. I saw it as an expression rather than a competition.
Mm.
And I think sometimes that can have a negative impact on how some people learn to play, because if they're trying to outplay each other rather than trying to find their voice as a musician, I think that's a completely different pursuit.
Absolutely, I completely agree.
Yeah.
But I mean, there are a lot of different aspects of life. I wouldn't entirely say that whether reality shows are something that should be encouraged or not encouraged, because uh, everybody is making a living through all that.
True.
There are so many musicians who are able to make a living of that, being
Yes,
part
true.
of the whole setup. There are mentors, there are trainers, there are judges. A lot of people are able to there are some lot of them are gaining popularity because of it. And it changes the whole commercial aspect. It's a
Yeah.
game changer for a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
If they see it as one of the commercial aspects of life, something they want to do to make money, to be popular, that's great.
Yeah.
But just being popular or just being on like a reality show or something, like you said,
Hmm.
one should still try and remember that you're still trying to be a better musician each day.
Yes. Yes.
And that you want to keep working hard on the craft, and be and remain surrendered to this art form.
Right. No, I take your point. I take your point because they're, the behind the scenes people are trying to make a living and live their lives. And I remember growing up, a lot of the people around me were very anti pop music, especially, like guys in rock bands, they sort of pop music as a negative. And I remember that really changed for me when I started to spend a little bit more time. I guess when I became a professional, also when I started to spend more time in LA, and a lot of my friends there who are fantastic musicians, they're also just working on, pretty straightforward pop music, or they're working on radio jingles and things like that. And you go, okay, well, this incredible musician has also got to function in the world and pay their bills, and this is part of it, isn't it?
Absolutely. I've done so much of session work,
Yeah.
playing for jingles, playing for Bollywood music, playing concerts, as a classical music, playing Bollywood shows.
Right.
Because, it was a great experience, and I was performing with some great composers of our country.
Yeah.
So, that was totally commercial work, so you have to kind of branch out. You need to keep doing different kinds of work also.
Exactly. Yeah.
Experience, everything is a wonderful experience in it, by itself.
That's right. And just because music might be simple doesn't mean there's anything less about it, because sometimes playing simple is actually harder.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Playing with more musical sympathy and complementing something and making sure you stay out of the way musically.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you.
There's some pretty big names on your list of people you've worked with, and I guess it's a nice transition. We're just talking about pop music, and one of the people on your list is Katy Perry. Did these collaborations happen once you moved to the States, or did they begin when you're still in Mumbai?
Well, I moved to the States in and around 2003 2004.
Oh wow, that's a lot longer than I thought.
Yeah, so I have been here in the US for almost 17 18 years now.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
And I was touring since 2002.
Yeah.
So these things were anyway happening, but a lot of it was playing with some of the legends of Indian classical music growing up.
Yep.
That was my forte, and that was the genre I belonged to.
Mm-hmm.
And moving to the US, I always had in mind wanting to branch out, explore different forms and genres of music, play with the world musicians, jazz and pop and rap and rock, and I did record for the Rolling Stones when they were in Mumbai in 2001.
You played on a Rolling Stones record?
Yes, with Keith Richards.
I saw that you worked with Keith Richards, but I didn't realize you played with the whole of the Stones.
I recorded for them.
Yeah. That's incredible.
And then I did a recording specially for Keith Richards when he was in Mumbai, when all of them were in Mumbai.
Yeah.
And so, that was something I was already doing,
right?
Even when I was in India.
So when you moved to the States, was it a continuation of that level of being busy, or did you go to the States and have to sort of start again or build a new career there?
Well, I mean, it was a fresh start.
Yeah.
It was definitely something very new to me. It was a game changer in my life to kind of, having done whatever I could, as a child artist, as a young artist.
Yeah.
In India, and having played with some of the biggest names, that was already something I was doing.
Right.
But then to come to the US as someone completely unknown, and starting out fresh and telling people what I did or what I do as a musician.
Yeah.
It takes time to get the word out.
Mm.
So I had to kind of start from ground zero, I would say.
Did you have contacts? Did you already know people there?
I actually didn't.
You didn't?
No, I was touring in 2003.
Yeah.
And I was conducting a workshop in Boston.
Right.
And the promoter said to me, "Well, there's a great response for your tabla workshop.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever considered moving to the US?"
And that was it.
I said, I've always wanted to.
Yeah.
But I don't know where to begin. I don't know anybody here, and I'm okay to take it up as challenge, because if it doesn't work, I can always go back, and I'm already doing decent work back in India. So
yeah, true.
So I said, okay, it's okay to you unless you try, you won't know whether you will fail or you will make it, right?
Right.
So
Yes.
you have to try different avenues, you have to try new challenges.
Yes.
So I said, let me come to this country and see how it all pans out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I didn't know much, many people when I moved there.
Mm-hmm.
I was still playing Indian concerts even after moving here,
Right. Yeah.
because the Indian, presenters or the my fellow artists, whoever came to the US, they knew I was already here.
Yeah.
So they would reach out to me, and I was still playing a lot of Indian concerts. So it took some time to kind of make new friends, new collaborations,
Mm.
and all that. And I enjoyed the journey because it's like taking baby steps.
Yes.
Uh, each time playing with somebody locally or playing at a jazz club, one day, and then meeting another musician. Hey, come on, wow, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Why don't we, play another gig or something like that?
Yeah. Now we probably should circle back and talk a little bit more about Keith Richards, such an iconic figure in music, and such a big character. And on a recent documentary, probably from I don't know 5 years ago or so, it revealed another side to him. He's known as this big rock star, but in fact he likes drinking tea and spending time with his grandkids. And I love that surprise, that contrast. There's a real person behind the rock star image. So what was your impression working with him?
Well, I met him. I met all of them about 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And they were staying at one of the most prominent five-star hotels in Mumbai.
Right.
And so when I went to meet all of them actually.
Mm.
I got a call. Actually, I got a call from one of his saxophone players,
Right.
called Tim Reese, and he called out and said, "Hey, are you free to do a recording? We want to do have some tabla on one of Keith's songs. So can you come over to the hotel?" I said, "Sure," and I went there with my tabla, and the whole portable recording studio was set up in the hotel in those days.
Yep.
The M box was there for Pro Tools.
Yep.
And so it was all set up, the mic and everything. And I met him, and he said, "Hey, thanks for coming. Would you like to record on one of my songs?" So I said, "Oh, it's such an honor.
Yeah.
Great master." So I said, "Sure." And then so his saxophone player and then his recording engineer, sound engineer, we went up to the hotel room, and one take and I was done.
That was it.
They were like, "Wow, you're good to go."
Yeah.
And so he heard it the next day, and he said he really loved what he heard.
Fantastic.
And I was hanging out with them for the next 3-4 days.
Wow. So you got to know them all.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I was backstage with them at their concert.
Yep.
I was one of those privileged ones to be hanging out with them backstage. And we had a great time talking about music, and was good fun because I met all the 4 of them.
Yeah. You seem like such a grounded person. I wonder if you ever get nervous or if you ever get starstruck.
Well, I always prefer to. I always, like they say, it's always. What do they say? I mean, it's like. I always try to learn from other people.
Right. Okay.
A lot of, I think there is so much to learn from everybody.
Yeah.
Somebody junior, senior, even a kid could teach you something new and go, even
Definitely.
as a normal day, as a normal aspect of life. So sometimes I feel, in life, there have been so many great people who have done so much great work and are so grounded and unassuming. I mean, imagine, somebody who found a cure for a cancer,
Right.
or found a cure for heart patients or something. I mean, they are giving you a new leash of life.
Yes.
They're giving you a new life. And I was very fortunate to meet so many incredible achievers, even when I stayed in Boston for 10 years.
Mm.
somebody doing research at Harvard or somebody teaching at MIT. These people are these are people who have changed lives for all of us.
Right. So would it be fair to say then that you're not so impacted by celebrity as a concept, but you're more impacted by the contribution of the individual? Is that a fair statement?
Always.
Yeah.
Always. I think a person's humility, a person's accomplishments speak for themselves.
Yes.
So I don't feel awestruck or anything, but I feel enamored. You feel enamored by somebody's accomplishments and persona and their charisma in being kind to everybody around them. I
Right.
think humanity and these values make life more interesting and meaningful.
Definitely. One of the people you've worked with happens to be quite a big hero of mine, which is Herbie Hancock. And I've loved his music for many years, but I also found his book, his autobiography, Possibilities, to be one of the most inspiring and encouraging books I've ever read. His I don't know if you've read it, but his journey. Obviously, he's very famous and well documented, playing for Miles Davis and his own career and his innovation and so on. But also his journey with his spirituality and his own personal life and trying to get through some of the troubles that he went through and so on. He's one of those people that I think about when I'm not sure what to do next. And, when this interview was pitched to me, I thought, well, I mean, you're an amazing musician yourself, but also you've worked with one of my heroes. So did you get to spend much time with Herbie? Have you gotten to know him at all?
Oh, absolutely, because I was in Melbourne last year for the International Jazz Festival. That's when I played for the first time with him.
Yeah.
And just like you said, I think what really struck me was his simplicity, his humility,
Yes.
his kindness, and in spite of being one of the greatest legends of our times, he reminded me a lot of my guru, Ustad Alla Rakha Khanand,
Yeah.
and I felt a lot of similarities in their greatness.
Right.
Was not only in their music, but it was also in their soul.
Yeah.
And in their kindness. And I think that's what reflects in their music also.
Yes, that's right.
Being such good people,
Yeah.
being such humble people, I think that's what reflects in their music.
That's right.
Yeah.
And to have gone through some of the stuff that people like Herbie have gone through, the history of America has been very turbulent, especially in race relations and that sort of thing. Coming up in New York, which wasn't always a very safe place to live, navigating the music industry, and to get out the other end of that and to still be so kind and to have so much empathy for humanity, to me is astounding, because he's almost earned the right to not be like that, but he is like that.
Well, those are marks of greatness,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, you talk of people like Nelson Mandela, or one of our ex-presidents, APG Kalam, who made India a nuclear power.
Right.
He was one of the greatest scientists our country produced, right? So when you think of lives of these people, I think to be able to forgive,
Yeah.
and to be able to rise above those difficult situations,
Yes.
those turbulent times, those tormenting times, I think that's what has made them who they are.
Yes, and the music becomes an extension of that communication. I mean, I think music is communication between musicians and also communication with an audience. And to be able to connect people together, he did that album, The Imagine Project, which I believe was back in about 2010, and he had people from all over the world playing on the same album. That's just a beautiful example of how music can really bring people together and focus on what we have in common rather than focus on our differences.
That's what, like you said, be it Keith Richards or be it, Herbie Hancock, great people, great men, great musicians. The bottom line is kindness,
Yes.
love, affection, humanity. I think that's all that really matters at the end of it.
I agree. Yeah. So on a slightly different subject, I like to tell people that the only difference between noise and music is rhythm. I wonder what your answer would be. What would you say the difference between noise and music is?
It can be melody also.
Yeah. But you could argue that you could get any structure of melody and put it over a rhythm pattern and it would still work. It might be a bit wacky, but it would still work.
Yeah, I mean, I think for percussion instruments to be melodic is the most difficult aspect.
Yeah.
If your drum starts singing,
Right.
if your drum starts emoting, a melodic element to it,
Mm.
then you've made it. Then you've made it.
I've had that conversation with musicians in the past as well. Guitarists are known for speeding up and having a little bit shaky tempo and things like that. So we like to say, you should play guitars and you should play horns and things like that. You should play these instruments as if they're percussion to give that rhythmic sensibility. And I remember a number of years ago we were saying, and the instrument that should play melodically is the drums, which is it's an interesting concept, isn't it? Because you play a drum that you can actually change the pitch on, but someone sitting at a conventional rock drum kit, they don't have any kind of pitch control really.
Correct.
So what does playing percussion or drums melodically mean in your interpretation?
I think you should try and the music. Your drumming should be musical,
Right. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Any drummer, you have to be in sync with the melody player.
Mm-hmm.
You have to try and complement that as closely as possible.
Yes.
So in doing that, in that process, it's very important to be able to have your drum sing.
Right.
And people should people should feel that it's touching their soul, and that can only happen um, if your drumming is singing.
So it comes back to communication again.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There is a word in Urdu called Roodar. Roo means the soul.
Right.
So if your music is soulful or your drumming is soulful, it will touch the heart of the listener.
Yeah.
I always believe that.
I agree. So do you have projects you're working on now or things you're working towards now or, in regards to the future?
Well, I'm trying to focus a lot of this lockdown time and, this, unfortunate circumstance that we all are going through due to Corona.
Yeah.
I think it's a good time, great time to kind of work on yourself, work on your music,
Mm-hmm.
be with yourself, kind of, explore a lot of other other things about life that you didn't do earlier.
Yes, that's right.
As busy musicians,
Yeah.
just being on the road on the tour all the time. So I'm trying to teach more. I'm online students. I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to do my own riyas, my own practice lot more. Because like we spoke earlier, this is the time to be more creative and come up with new stuff.
Yes, exactly.
New exploration of new things.
Yeah.
So new projects is I'm actually in North Carolina now to set up another school of mine. I have one in Boston
Right.
called New England School of Music. So I'm here. I came in March to set it up, but unfortunately with this whole situation, a lot of my students have moved online.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm waiting for things to be normal. So I can in person go and teach also in North Carolina where my school setup will be. I'm also in the process of starting like a web series on Instagram and Facebook.
Fantastic.
Exploring the lives of my fellow musicians.
Yeah. And do you have any final thoughts that you would like to pass on to people learning to play music, people who are maybe new to music or starting their careers?
I mean, the best advice is to be patient with any art form. It doesn't just come overnight.
Right.
To be able to sing one song in a reality show and win it, it's different.
Yeah.
But if you want to go into history and you want to be a legend and you want to people to remember, for years and centuries to come.
Yep.
Sorry, it's going to be a lot of hard work.
Absolutely.
Lot of perseverance, lot of patience, a lot of challenges, lot of frustrations, lot of difficult trying times. Musically, professionally also.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say they should find their real calling before they they just see the glamour of any profession.
Yes. I think that's a fantastic answer. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been...
I thank you, Danny. Thank you so much for having me.
Very inspiring talking to you.
Really appreciate it, and look forward to seeing you again.
Yes.
And sharing some more thoughts and learning about your life as well.
I hope we can meet in person once the world stabilizes.
I'm sure it will happen.
And perhaps we can play some music together.
Absolutely. It'll be an honor.
Yeah, for me too. All the best to you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much to Aditya Kalyanpur for being on the show. I really hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Thank you also to Katy, his manager, for putting the conversation together. Very much appreciated. Thank you to everybody for listening, and please spread the word. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook. Give us a like, give us a follow, do the whole thing, and we will be back next time with another, hopefully, invigorating episode. Take care. Later.
If you find what we're doing useful and you like this podcast, please do like, share and subscribe and give us a review on iTunes.